It's 3:15, and that means it's time for...
The Real Deal with Bill McNeil.
That's right. Welcome once again to The Real Deal with Bill McNeil. I'm your host, Bill McNeil, and you're probably wondering exactly what is The Real Deal today.
Hey, good question.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and we have an interview with Jonathan Hickman that came out in Adventures in Poor Taste. If you go to the video description, it will have a link, and you can read the entire article. I have trimmed things down for the purpose of this video, but he kind of talked about his time at X-Men, some of his original plans, some of his thoughts there. He also talks about a little bit about what to expect in Inferno, as well as kind of his future plans after Inferno comes out. Thought it was all really interesting, so I'm going to read the stuff that I thought was good, give my thoughts afterwards. There are also 6 exclusive images that came out, some covers for Inferno, some interior work from Valerio Schiti, obviously, that's working with Jonathan Hickman on that series that I think a lot of people are excited for. I know I am. Now, I'm going to cover that with Doc on This Week in X-Men, so expect that on Sunday. Doc and I will talk about those, kind of break them down a little bit before we talk about, what is it this week? Hellions and, oh man, is it New Mutants? Man, I hope there's something else that comes out because I don't want to talk about New Mutants if I don't have to. Not my personal favorite series out there. But I thought this was pretty informative. Obviously, we know that Jonathan Hickman, after he's done with Inferno, is moving on to different plans. He doesn't, give a whole lot of hints. We'll talk about that stuff here. So let's get right into it and talk about his X-Men plans. I'll read the questions from Adventures in Poor Taste, and then Jonathan Hickman's answers, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts on it. The first question was, in your X-Men run, what made you want to make it an anthology series centering around Cyclops and his family? And Hickman responded, I dig the whole Summers clan, but the original idea behind the book was kind of a travelogue for Krakoa, with Cyclops being our guide. It was supposed to just be 12 issues and very different than when it was first planned out. And that obviously changed a lot by the time I got to write issue 1. Once again, we find out that there were a lot of changes to the way they were going to execute Dawn of X, which was coming out of House of X and Powers of 10 from Jonathan Hickman, Pepe Larraz, and R.B. Silva. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of even the original plan where every issue is kind of going to be standalone. I like one-shots, but I don't think 12 consecutive one-shots is all that effective if you're trying to tell an X-Men story. That was my own personal feeling. We didn't even really get that. We did get a lot of one-shots. It was a lot of jumping around. Sometimes it was kind of directly tying out of House of X Powers of 10. Obviously, we got early on the big reveal that the children of the Vault were kind of out there, and they were going to be playing a big part, as well as Nimrod wasn't destroyed during the House of X series, or at least that part of them was destroyed, but they were remaking a new one, and that stuff was all really interesting. But I think really jumping around and not having a real through line, maybe that was adding some subplots, but was tackling the stuff that was directly introduced in House of X Powers of 10. It was the most effective idea, in my opinion. Of course, he could have executed this perfectly, but we never really got to see it. But there was a lot of down moments, especially like the horticulture thing. I think a lot of people are still surprised about that one. There were a couple of highlights. I personally liked it when that half of Arakko arrived and it merged with Krakoa, and it was like weird island sex. I thought that was kind of cool. Obviously, that does tie into what we learned in House of X Powers of 10, but we'll never know because he didn't really get to execute what he wanted to the way he wanted to. And he continues on answering that question, and he says, a big thing that I really regret not getting to try was how we wanted to execute the launch of the entire X line. My initial idea was to use the X-Men title as a springboard for the other books. So X-Men #1 would have been all about the Hellfire Trading Company, and then we would have launched Marauders 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks after Marauders #1. And because the complications introduced in that story, X-Men #2 would have been about the need for the mutant CIA, and then we would have launched X-Force #1 2 weeks later. So you would have introduced the ideas and the reasons for the books, and then they would have launched sequentially after that. Obviously, after the success of House of X Powers of 10, which I think they probably, to a degree, suspected was going to happen. They wanted to, take advantage of the market. There was a lot of enthusiasm. So they kind of, in my personal opinion, and I heard from other people as well, they thought maybe they went a little bit too hard, too fast, few too many titles. Obviously, the first issue of X-Men had nothing to do with the Hellfire Trading Company. It was about the Summers family, right? On the moon, where they're introducing all the family members, and you're finding out that there's a unique living situation with Wolverine and Jean Grey and Cyclops. And then I think the second issue is they're going to investigate this island, and they end up kind of merging. So they never even introduced Hellfire Trading Company like Jonathan Hickman had anticipated doing or planned on doing in X-Men. We certainly did see some ideas of X-Force and the need for them within X-Men, but it didn't launch anything out of there. I do think this sequential plan or this idea would have been more effective than just all of a sudden, boom, here's a bunch of books. Like introducing the ideas, the characters, giving them a mission, right, from Charles or Cyclops or whoever the leadership figure you wanted to use, and sent them out on the mission. Then you have the book come out. I think it would have flowed better. I think it would have kept things a little tighter. The continuity would have been better, and everything would have been tied in better. So I could see that probably was a better plan as far as the execution of the launch out of Dawn of X and all the associated titles. So that was probably a much better idea than what we ended up getting. They would later go on to ask him, they say, I know you spoke about this in a recent newsletter, the desire to bring back the element of surprise to comics. Based on your time with the line, do you feel like X-Men comics, where fan speculation and theories are just baked into the experience, benefit from a sense of mystery? Obviously, we used to do an entire segment here, weekly with Skip and Tosh called Outside the Bleed, where we just talked about these X-Men comics and we're doing a lot of speculation. Once we kind of figured out that not everything was as tied together as we thought it would be, we kind of ended up having to drop it because there weren't enough comics that Skip and I were both enjoying that we could talk about in depth like that. And it was just, unfortunately, the writing was kind of on the wall, pretty clear, maybe 3 or 4 months into Dawn of X, that it wasn't going to be quite what we expected. But we're certainly part of the speculation, obviously, talk about it here on the channel. And, I had an entire show dedicated to it. But Jonathan Hickman ends up answering. He says, just to be clear, if I had my way, there would be no previews of anything ever, no cover reveals, no review copies, and no embargoed coverage. I've tried to sell us just lying about, there's a little bit in the middle, and then he continues on. I've tried to sell us just lying about everything that we solicit and market stuff, but something about fraud and constipated lawyers. But what do these people expect? I get paid to lie for a living. I'm with him about this one. I like doing the solicitation video, but sometimes, and a lot of times, they give far too much information away. They give real big, juicy spoilers away in the solicitation. Like, what are you thinking? I remember when you're reading House of X Powers of 10, you got the original solicitation for the first issue of House of X and the first solicitation for Powers of 10. The solicitations for every issue 1 through 6 after that for both series were the exact same. Like, you never got new information, and that was great. That was smart. I'm with him. I wish they wouldn't even have shown the covers. Everything would have been a complete mystery, and you're like, oh my goodness. You wouldn't have known what to expect. It makes the reading experience better. And I know you're going to be like, but Wes, you do all that here on the channel. Yeah, because the information's out there, and I have a comic book news and opinion channel. You go throughout the news. I got to talk about it. You throw out a cover there. We got to do a little speculation. But I'm with Jonathan Hickman on this one, that it improves the reading experience and the immersing yourself into the world where you don't have an idea what to expect. A lot of times, because it is sequential storytelling, or not sequential storytelling, but episodic storytelling, that you expect a lot of times one episode to lead into the next. And maybe you diverge here or there. So you have an idea where it's heading, but you never know because there's not the cover or information in solicitation that might give away the spoiler or an idea of what's going to happen. Like, I just read the solicitation for Batman Reptilian #5, and they kind of gave away like who the monster is, or at least where they came from. I'm like, what a goodness, why would you do that? That's been the key central mystery in the first 3 issues. You know, they still haven't revealed what the monster looks like. They're just showing you the story that's going on. And when I read that, it was a bummer. So I'm with Jonathan. Lie if you have to. Who was it that just lied not too recently? It was Robert Kirkman, right? Where they were soliciting further issues of The Walking Dead, even after the finale itself had been solicited, because they didn't want anyone to know that was the finale. I love it. That's the way you do it. I know it probably pissed off a lot of retailers, right? I bet they were mad. They thought they were getting more issues of one of the best-selling comic books out there on the market. But I thought it was great. You have no idea. Like, either you got in there and got it, and you didn't. And yeah, I'd say lie to everybody if you can. But obviously, the lawyers at Marvel and Disney were not as on board Jonathan Hickman's plan. But as a customer, lie to me, baby. I wouldn't be surprised. I definitely, I do miss the element of surprise. Having the channel here and having to keep appraised of all this stuff sometimes can be a bummer. I love all you guys, and I love getting to talk about comic books. But it does have some negative side effects, I guess, of having the channel. He does talk about Inferno just a little bit. And like I said, Doc and I will be talking about this on This Week in X-Men on Sunday. We're going to talk about the exclusive images. We will probably talk about this this question and answer as well, because it's really the only one that directly addresses Inferno itself. So we'll do an Inferno preview. But this is the question from Adventures in Portes. I feel like X-Fans have a pretty good sense as to why Xavier and Magneto are in Mystique's crosshairs. What can you tease about Emma Frost's role in Inferno? Certainly, it's quite apparent that Mystique is probably aware that Destiny is not going to be resurrected via the mutant protocols at the direction of Xavier and Magneto. Does she know that Moira X is a driving force behind that as well? I'm not really certain. We'll have more to say about that on Sunday. But this is what Jonathan Hickman had to say, and I think this is probably the most interesting answer that he gives. I think that it's a mistake to assume anyone is on any particular side forever. I mean, part of what we've done is presented the idea of the nation of Krakoa as being monolithic in a higher cause that all mutants submit their personal ones to. Mystique is interesting because she's the one who has really pushed against the idea of that for love, if you can believe it. And Emma's interesting because she bought in when we thought she might not. And was it one more time or one last time? Emma Frost is a really interesting character. She is a leader. She's conniving. And she's always looking out for number one. That's one of the reasons when you read these Dawn of X lines, now we're in a Reign of X, Emma Frost feels a little off because certainly she's looking out for herself, and she's been doing some back door dealings. We saw her do that thing with Magneto to get her own island and stuff. But why has she been all on this plan and everything? There's a good chance, and they're addressing it here maybe means that it won't happen, that if it isn't Emma that does a full heel turn on the Quiet Council, maybe it'll be another prominent member. But I would absolutely love to see Emma seeing the fracture between Charles and Xavier, which we're kind of seeing right now with the trial of Magneto. I wonder if Hickman's going to take any of that into Inferno. I hope he doesn't, because it's going to be a far inferior story. And then Mystique, kind of going against them. If Emma sees this as an opportunity to empower or use Mystique against, her fellow Quiet Council members, that's absolutely in Emma's wheelhouse. That's like almost her MO, right? To turn on everybody, use Mystique against them, and make a push for power for herself, and maybe put herself at the head of the Quiet Council. That would be really interesting. I hope we get to see something like that. I don't want to see Beast. He's a weird character, but Emma would be a good one. What would be another good one? Well, you couldn't see it from Nightcrawler. But now Emma would be the right one. And maybe she'll be using Kitty Pryde as well. But that would be pretty cool. I hope that's what we see, right? Where Emma ends up using Mystique, her own quest, her thirst for vengeance against her to carry out her own wishes, and to ascend up the totem pole to the hierarchy of the Quiet Council and the head of the table with the mutant nation of Krakoa. I think that would be pretty cool. Definitely want to talk to Doc about this as well. I'm sure he has his own theories. As far as future plans, and this is stuff directly after Inferno, he does talk about X-Men a little bit, and then after that he kind of moves on. We've got 2 more questions that he was asked. Adventures in Poor Taste said, looking ahead, does what comes next for the X line have your fingerprints on it in any way, or was your job very much focusing on Inferno and queuing the rest of the X slack up for success? And this is what Jonathan Hickman had to say. Pretty much the last thing I'll do in the office is a big 3-day X Summit. That's the precursor to us presenting Marvel with what the next few years look like. I'm sure we'll be answering questions the company might have about the storytelling choices the group is making, but that will be easy to do in this case because we've been individually working on this for a while. The summit is where we'll be taking everything that everyone has planned, integrate that with the bigger ideas regarding the direction of the line, seeing how it all lines up, and then making sure it has some kind of structure and rhythm. He later continues, as for fingerprints, what I'm adding right now are just plans and ideas, some framework, some cool hooks, a few character beats, things like that. So there you go. He'll be doing this 3-day X Summit, and I imagine the last time I did this is when we end up getting the Hellfire Gala as an event kind of thing, because we know that is initially supposed to be like a 1 issue of Marauders, ends up being an entire month's event. I don't think Trial of Magneto probably came out of one of these X Summits. I think that was probably done within X Slack and then kind of pushed up. But I imagine they're going to be mapping out what are the next few years of X-Men events going to be towards. What's the timeline? Where do we have to all be meeting up to execute some of these things? I just really hope. I imagine most people here understand my disdain for. Well, they might not understand it, but understand how much I really do dislike the Hellfire Gala. I think that was an abomination. Not as bad as Age of X-Men, but pretty damn close. It was even worse than Ten of Swords, which I thought wasn't very good. At least parts of Ten of Swords were good. I hope they abandon this idea. I think it's awful. I know they did get a sales bump because they had a lot of special covers with dresses and stuff, the Met Gala kind of thing. But I personally think that story wasn't repulsive in a way like, oh my goodness, that was gross. But it was so boring, inconsequential, and uninteresting that I think it's repulsive to long-term fans or even new readers to come in and read something like that, invest their money and time in, and realize that's what you're getting out of it. And I hope that Marvel leadership maybe like, we tried this. I know you want to do it again and you want to make it an annual event. Let's slow our roll. Do it once in Marauders. You can do it in Marauders, but we're not doing it as a line-wide event. I strongly fear that I'm they're not going to obviously listen to me. I'm not going to be at the X Summit, but I think they'll probably be continuing on with this thing, and that's unfortunate. But I think it's cool of Jonathan to go there. He's obviously been helping out. Well, according to him, he's been helping out. At least lay the framework for the forward direction of X-Men as he lets go of the reins and moves on with his life. I don't think that he's really had the reins for too long, but I do think they should probably take some input from him. I think it's smart for him to kind of avoid X-Men after this. Once you hand over the reins, it's their deal. You don't want to be in there interfering or trying to override other people's creative decisions at that point. You've had your word, as you've had your say, as he said. He's got some ideas, framework, cool hooks, character beats. If they want to use them, great. If they don't want to use them, that's probably to their own detriment. Me personally, Jonathan Hickman was, in my opinion, the best writer out there. Although on that X line, although Zeb Wells has been doing a really good job, and Ben Percy's been more hit or miss lately, but he was a lot of hit early on. So that will, I guess, be finishing up his time on X-Men after Inferno. The final question that was asked of him, does your new Marvel project connect to the work you've done on X-Men in any way, or will they be something completely different? I think this is really important. Jonathan Hickman says, it's probably too early to talk about my next thing, especially in any way that would answer your question in a satisfying manner, but it's definitely not X-related. In fact, unless I come back into the office to do something later on, I'll intentionally steer clear of doing mutant stuff. So what could Jonathan Hickman be planning on doing, or what is he going to be working on? Well, he certainly has an acclaimed run on Fantastic Four that I think a lot of people liked. I think Marvel didn't do him a whole lot of favors, as they were Fantastic Four falling out of favor because of the Fox deal at that time. He certainly has had a very substantial. You think about all the stuff he did with Avengers and the Illuminati, and leading into Infinity, and you got like Secret Wars and all that stuff coming out. So I don't think, even though it feels like Jason Aaron's about to wrap up his time on Avengers, hopefully with issue 50, I might be wrong on that one. It feels like Jason Aaron's time is kind of winding down. I don't see Jonathan Hickman moving there either. Me personally, I would like to see him on Fantastic Four. It's been so long since we had a good Fantastic Four writer. If you can't put Chip Zdarsky on there, I would want Jonathan Hickman. But I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. I think Dan Slott might just be married to that project for a while. We do know that Spider-Man has got like this group, this team that's working on the project. They're going to be doing Spider-Man Beyond into 2022 for the 60th anniversary of the character, right? And they got these all these things happening. There is going to be a new #1 likely launching out of that. If Jonathan Hickman does a Spider-Man book, that would be interesting. I don't know that that's the best character, because when you think about like Avengers and Fantastic Four, and even what he was doing with the X-Men, it's a lot of really big picture things, but there's a lot of mechanical thing, like mechanisms working together, and there's interplay, and if this doesn't work kind of thing. It's Spider-Man really is all about the character moments, and I just don't know that Jonathan Hickman is the best at developing big character moments, although we did get a fantastic one in, what was that, House of X #4, when we got that conversation between Wolverine and Nightcrawler. That was a fantastic character moment. Unfortunately, once you find out in the next issue that they didn't really die, and that conversation was not quite as meaningful as it seemed at the time. But I don't know that he would be a great fit for Spider-Man. I think he would do really cool stuff with some of the cosmic things, like if he did a Guardians of the Galaxy, and maybe like some of that really cool cosmic stuff. But it feels like that's Al Ewing's like playground, and they're not going to be taking Al Ewing off that stuff unless they have to. So I don't know. Maybe he's just going to be doing event series, right, that tie in with other people's work. I don't think that he's going to pick up the ball and just like grab a line and do the flagship title and have input on the rest. I think Marvel will have an idea, like, we're moving to this, we want this to be a big deal, we're going to throw Jonathan Hickman's name on it, and he'll help execute it, at least the mainline story, and we can bump up some sales on that. And because he's such a big picture thinker, I don't think Marvel Comics is a big picture comic book publisher right now. Like, a lot of Hickman's ideas take years to execute properly. So I don't see him doing an ongoing anymore. I think he'll be doing event series, and maybe he'll be helping out the mainline writers, being like, hey, we're going to end up here, so you need to get me there so I can do this. And he'll probably just be doing event series moving forward. That would be my guess. But I say put him back on the Fantastic Four. It'd probably be best for everybody. Nobody needs to be deep reading Dan Slott right now. And, the sales are about to dip below 30,000, which is crazy for a Fantastic Four when you hadn't seen it for so long. And there was a lot of enthusiasm for the series. Can't get Chip Zdarsky. I say let Jonathan Hickman do it. Those are my thoughts on Jonathan Hickman's interview with Adventures in Poor Taste. I thought it was really good. As I said on Sunday, Doc and I will go into this a little bit more. We'll talk about those preview images. We'll definitely talk about the one question and answer that we're specifically talking about, Inferno. We'll do a preview of that before we talk about the other X-Men comics. I really appreciate this. I hope you had a good time. Definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments section. What did you think about all these things? Are you disappointed he didn't really get a layout X-Men the way he wanted to, at least for the first 12 issues? They didn't roll out the X-Men line the way he thought would have been the best way. And what are your thoughts on spoilers? I'm with it. Stop doing all the spoilers in the solicitations. It's bull crap, baby. That's what I got to say.